Guys, Mel O here, and you will hear shortly that the audio on this episode is quite horrible. And I could not re record this episode because by the time it airs, Zoe will be on a plane going to England for a little bit. And what happened is that I got a brand new webcam, and for whatever reason, the webcam microphone decided to override my soundboard microphone. And so the audio on this episode was extremely challenging, and I did the best I could to audio edit it. So bear with me on this episode. There's a lot of good information here, and know that next time we come back, we will make sure that this problem doesn't happen again. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you. Love finances the other F word and want to support the show? Become a patron by going to patreon.com/FTOFW. You'll get special features, a shout out on the air, and early releases. Or if you prefer, pick up some merchandise at financestheotherfword.com.
As fantastic a CFP as Mel O is, and as wonderful an attorney as I am, please do note that anything said in our show are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, and welcome to Finances the Other F Word. Today on the episode, we are going to dive deeper into our wonderful co-host, Zoe Terry. And this was actually, dive deeper. Dive deeper.
You know you want to.
Yes.
Who doesn't?
Exactly. So we're going to dive deeper into Zoe Terry. And this actually was an idea from Kara, our Rockstar patron. She is amazing. And she gave me actually a ton of fantastic ideas for us to cover, which is going to be a fuck ton of research. But to be honest with you, a lot of the ideas that she gave us are pretty damn amazing, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it. So I would highly recommend for those of you out there that if you have ideas for the show, please reach out and let us know. Hit us up on our DMs, do something, and let us know so that we're not just sitting around looking at each other going, I don't know, what do you want to talk about? I don't know, what do you want to talk about? Just at least make that part easier for us. So we're going to talk about a couple different things today. We're going to talk about the difference between practicing law in the United States versus in America, or no, that's the same place. Let's back up. Yeah. United States versus Britain, and why they wear those stupid fucking wigs. That's the first question. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the intricacies and the ins and outs and the complications of family law. Because, of course, as I mentioned on our last episode, Zoe is now working with Family Law of Nevada.
Legal Aid Center
that's also in Nevada, whatever. Okay, so first of all, why do they wear those stupid fucking wigs?
Wow, straight to it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, first of all, I would have to explain to you the difference between the lawyers who wear them and the lawyers that don't, okay? Because over here you have attorneys, but in England we have solicitors and barristers, okay? And the solicitors, which is what I was in England and which is kind of more the equivalent of an attorney over here, the solicitors are the ones who the clients come to, you take the case, whatever it may be, and you work it up to its resolution. The barristers, who are the ones that wear the silly wigs, and the judges also wear silly wigs, but the barristers are, for a start, they consider themselves much more
serious,
much better, you know. Excuse me. But that could be why, because solicitors are belching and farting and swearing, and barristers would never do that.
Well, right? I guess you were a solicitor.
I was a solicitor, yeah, I just said that, yeah. No. The barristers are the ones that usually the solicitors employ, okay? They'll have a case and it needs a really in-depth decision, or it needs to go to a court where we don't have rights of audience, and so they will send the case to, or a brief to the barrister, and the barrister will do the in-depth decision or will represent the client in the courtroom. Although, and it used to be that the barristers did almost all of the advocacy, as in going to the court, but solicitors got more and more rights of audience over the years, and so we could actually do a lot of the court work ourselves, but some things you would still, like trials and things like that, on the whole, generally you would have a barrister do it. So that's the difference, first of all, if you get that. And so solicitors are your everyday, normal, bad suits, bad hair, kind of lawyers, and then your barristers are the ones that do the advocacy and the in-depth opinions, whereas over here the two are kind of meshed together. So for example, when I came over here, and as I said, I was a solicitor in England, and I came over here and became an attorney, I had no idea that in fact I was going to end up having to do trials and all the everything. So that was a bit of a shock to the system, because that wasn't my favorite thing to do. But so yeah, that's the kind of basic difference between our legal framework, legal personnel, and why they wear the silly wigs. I think that was your original question, which, like any good lawyer, I didn't answer.
Correct.
Yeah, it dates back to olden times, and there's been many calls for them to not have to wear it because it's outdated and it's it puts people off or frightens people, but they don't want to give those wigs up because it makes them special, makes them superior.
Makes them look stupid as fuck. Every time I see any type of court anything over there, I just it looks like a big Monty Python skit. Like the whole fucking thing, especially when they have like pitch black hair underneath and they have the wig on and it doesn't hide all their hair, and I'm just like, this is the stupidest fuck. These are attorneys, you guys. These are attorneys looking like they're fucking going to Rocky Horror Picture Show. Is just ridiculous. So basically over here, the attorneys are 2 for 1. So the one attorney is expected to do everything depending on how far the court case goes, where in England sounds like it's broken up.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. But
Thank you.
well done you.
Yay.
There, and over here, I guess it's like that now over there too. You have each attorneys are much more specialised on the whole. Although, like I said, it kind of has morphed into that in England too. But in England, you used to have like your general high street solicitor, right? Who in a small town, there would be just a couple of solicitors, and they would do everything. They would do your divorce, they'd do your injury case, they'd do your wills, they would do a bit of everything, right? Whereas over here, it appears to me anyway that people tend to specialise in a subject and stick with it, which I think is much better than trying to do a bit of everything badly. Although, I haven't been practicing in England for probably 15 years now, and physically haven't been there for 20 years, but they did move away from that, and more people. There is still your high street solicitor will do a bit of everything, but it's, I don't know, like I said, it's with ever changing laws and practices, it's really hard to be good at everything. You know what I mean? It's much better to specialise in something, which they definitely tend to do over here from what I can tell.
Yeah, I don't want a general practicing doctor to be down there looking at my nether regions and trying to figure out what's going on with my uterus.
Exactly. The other thing I was going to talk about is the difference in the education, right? Because there's a difference in education between here and England, Great Britain, and also a difference in education between solicitors and barristers. Okay, whereas over here, it's one path, as far as I know, to becoming an attorney. So I became a solicitor in England, and then, took the bar and became an attorney over here. But my education, and that's what I'm getting at, the legal education is different, very different between here and there. So here, limited understanding of it because I didn't go to law school here. But from my understanding, you do an undergraduate, then you go to law school, which I think is like 4 years or something ridiculous. And there's various tests you have to take before you even go to law school, and then you can sit the bar. And don't forget, this is another thing too, that you have to get barred for each state that you're in, whereas that isn't a thing in England, because it is between Scotland and England and Wales as well, I think now. But generally, you take the bar you become a solicitor in Southend, in Essex, you can still practice in Gloucestershire. Or, do you see what I mean? In different towns in England, it's just one big thing. Whereas here, you have to take an exam and you have to pass the bar for each separate state that you want to be licensed in, which is a big difference too.
Yeah, and for investments, you have to be licensed in every state you have clients. It's a pain in the fucking ass, and then each of them have different continuing educations that they want you to have. It's a total money grab. And then It used to be that if you had a client who, say, resided in Florida but was on vacation in Virginia, and they called you and they wanted to place a trade, you couldn't take the trade because you'd have to be licensed in Virginia also.
No way.
That's fucking ridiculous. Stupid bullshit. So it's a complete money grab, and a lot of them have different laws, and it's so I understand what you're saying, because it's the same in the financial institution world,
Although it does make sense here, because obviously you have the state and federal laws, and every state has slightly different laws. So as being barred in Nevada doesn't mean that I have any clue about injury claims or whatever I'm doing in California, because the laws are different. So, I get it, but that's just something else that's very different. In Great Britain, or I'll talk about England, because like I said, things have changed between Scotland and Wales and Ireland and England now. But in England, where I was born and raised and educated, to become a solicitor, you have to go to university, which is our equivalent of college, I guess, and do an undergraduate degree for 3 years. So I went to the University of East Anglia in Norwich and did a law degree for 3 years. And then after that, you go to law school, which is just 1 year. And I went to Nottingham Law School for that. And then after that, you then have to find a law firm or a practice to take you on, employ you for 2 years, and they call them training contracts. So you have to find somewhere to take you on to and give you a training contract for which you have to be paid, but not. It's a very, very low bar, and if you're a small firm, you can seek a waiver of that. So you do have to get paid, but not very well. And then you have to have experience in 4 different areas of law. So I did my training contract in a big regional firm called Shoesmiths, and I spent 6 months in 4 different departments, and they were commercial, property, corporate, ULR, which is pretty much the personal injury, and now I'm drawing a blank as what the other one was, but I can't even remember now. But so you have to spend 2 years doing a training contract, and then at that point you become admitted to the role, which is the equivalent of right now I'm a solicitor. Now I have to find a job, Whereas over here, completely different. You do your undergraduate or whatever it's called, and then you go to law school, like I said, for 4 years or something ridiculous. But there's no on-the-job training like us, where we had our training contract, where you really, it's one thing learning stuff in law school and another thing actually dealing with clients and dealing with reality. So I do like that side of our education. Whereas over here, once you're out of law school and you've sat the bar wherever, you're off. You can start your own firm, which is crazy to me, but you can come straight out of law school and start your own practice, even though you've had no actual experience.
So I have a question. I know it was a while when you went to law school, but law school in England, do you know if it's cheaper, or if at the time at least it was cheaper over there than it is in the United States?
Absolutely, for many reasons. First of all, because it's a year compared to 4 years. And back when I was in law school in 1994, so I think back then it cost me £10,000 to go to law school. Whereas when I came over here and I hear these crazy stories of people are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, it's crazy. Now again, this is 20 plus years ago, so I don't know what law school goes for now, but you can bet it's not going to be anywhere near what it is over here, because it's 1 year as opposed to 4, right?
Well, and so the reason why I'm asking that, so a lot of you guys have probably heard by the time this airs that Biden has initiated a plan to waive either $10,000 of student loan debt up to $20,000 of student loan debt. And we've talked about tuition and how much higher the inflation went from when we were coming up as Gen Xers and we were going to college versus going to college now. And the thing is that I haven't really gotten into that education reimbursement thing yet, which I am going to look at because I am curious as far as how they're expecting to pay for that. Because anytime you do anything good, even if it is worthwhile and altruistic, the thing is that the money, somebody's got to pay something somewhere. So it might not even come out of our specific personal taxes, but I mean, we will be paying for it in one way or another. And so I was very curious because a lot of times when you have stuff like that, America has created this educational institution that has allowed the inflation on it to run rampant, that has affected, millennials, and maybe to a lesser extent of Gen Zs. Gen Zs probably won't do college as much. They'll probably go to trading school, which, to be honest with you, I probably would have been a plumber if I could have, for real. But so that's the reason why I asked that question, because of course that's the newest thing that hit, and that's a whole big hubbub. And so I'll be following up with you guys as far as when I dig in deep to see those numbers, to see if that is a good idea and if it will really, because sometimes they do that, but then if you really get into it, they exclude a ton of the people that it's supposed to help, because that's the compromises they have to make. So even though you might think that they're going to, erase some of the student debt, when you really get into it, you figure out that no, in fact, they're not really erasing it for many people. So that's something we'll be exploring. So that's why I asked you that. So thanks for answering that. Yeah.
And just because we will talk about this in on another show, but I have to say that the people who say, well, I never went to college, and so why should I have to contribute to paying off their student debts or whatever? There are certain professions that, whether you like it or not, that we need, that you have to go to college for. Doctors, lawyers, and you might not like lawyers, but you need them.
Yeah.
And doctors for sure. So I get it if it's a student loan for someone who went to, some community college their debts probably won't be that big, but went to college to just piss it up the wall and do some kind of, I don't know what.
Partying.
Yeah. Then
frat housing.
I get it, but for the most part, the people with the huge debts are people in professions that there's no other way for them to get to where they needed to go.
Right. You can't be a fucking doctor on 2 years in a community college.
No. Thank fuck.
Yeah, and I don't want to be fucking. I don't want to be serviced.
Oh yes, you do. You want to be serviced all day long.
I don't want to be serviced by a doctor that's only had 2 years community college.
When I moved over from England to here, the first thing I had to do when I wanted to become an attorney is sit before a functional equivalency committee, which is the state bar's committee that only sits once a year, deciding if my education in England was equivalent to the education here, before I could even sit the bar. And I knew that they were going to say, yeah, it was, because English people have practiced, have gone between Great Britain and America. So that was the main difference. And then coming over here, there is no I can never say this word,
reciprocity.
Yeah, that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, I had to sit before the committee, and then I had to sit for the bar. They wouldn't just say, oh, you're a solicitor there, you have been a solicitor for there, so you can be an attorney here. No, that was not how it worked, which is probably fair enough. I didn't think that when I was studying for the bar.
So now you have a job working in Nevada, the legal aid. So for those of you who have kids and families and stuff like this will be interesting, obviously, since the laws are different in every single state. And, we've touched on the foster care system within Roe versus Wade episode. We've mentioned to it, multiple times. So explain to us a little bit about what you do at the Legal Aid Center, and then I'm going to have questions.
Mm-hmm. First of all, for the past 25 years, in England first and then here, I was a personal injury attorney. So that's where all my experience was, that's what my life was beforehand. I have now finally found my calling, I would say, and I work for the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada, which is a nonprofit that helps provide legal services to people who don't have the means to pay for it. So they help people with landlord and tenant, family law, guardianship, consumer issues. The only things they don't help with is criminal, but there are public defenders for that and other ways and means. But that's what the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada is, a nonprofit that's goal and mission is to help provide legal services to those that would otherwise not be able to afford it. I work for the Children's Advocacy Project, which is a branch of the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. So I'm a CAP attorney, Children's Advocacy Project attorney, and what our role is, there is now almost, I think there's 30 of us in Las Vegas, and our role is whenever a child is removed from their home because of abuse or neglect, there has to be a hearing before a court within 72 hours to determine whether the state was correct in removing that child. And at that point, at that hearing, under our law, every single child in the system is to be provided a CAP attorney, a Children's Advocacy Project attorney, and our role is to determine what that child wants. So we're not interested in what's in the best interest of the child, because that's what the state is there to do. We're not interested in what's best for the parents. That's what the parents' attorney is there for. We are simply there to be a voice for the children in the system.
So I guess I'm confused because, first of all, the children are minors. So the fact that they have a say is a little bit confusing to me anyway, because usually you can't, I mean, like with UTMAs and UGMA accounts and stuff like that, the age of majority in Nevada is 18. And so the thing is that if there was an investment account that you had for your child, they wouldn't have access to it till they were 18 years old. So I'm confused on why they would take and folks, you know how I feel about children, but I honestly don't mean this to sound cold as it does. I don't understand why you would take what the kids want into account, because if they just came from an abusive home, or if they just came from a home that has no food or has no power, or whatever, or is just disgusting. And of course, they're a little kid. They're going to be like, hey, I want to be back with my, my parents, or I want to be back with my, single mother or whatever. But we know that's not the best place for them to be. So I'm very confused on why the court system even takes into consideration what the kid wants. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not trying to be a bitch, but I just don't know why that would be relevant, especially depending on how horrible their home circumstances are.
Because many, many studies have shown that, well, first of all, let's start with, we're dealing with children from 0 actually up to 18 and sometimes 21. So there's a big age within that where they absolutely should have a say about whether they and it's not just whether they go back to their home, but where they go. Do they go to live with a grandma? Do they go to live with a foster parent? Do they, they absolutely should have a say, because not only is it their life, but those decisions have a major impact on their future. And there's been, there's lots of research about that. So, and don't forget, I'm just one part of the team, right? So I'm just there to say, hey, this is what Johnny wants to do. This is Johnny's preference, and you'll be surprised. Not always do they want to go back to that home, to that parent, but most of the time they do. And research has shown that kids do better with their parents, or if they absolutely can't be with parents, then with family members. So we're just there to put their voice across. Like I said, there are at least 2 other attorneys and the judge who have different points of view. It's what is in their best interests. What does the parent want? What is the child's best interest? And ultimately, and then what does the child want? It's just part of the parcel. The kid might want to go back with mum, but it might never happen. But they still get to have a voice.
So couldn't they just have a counselor say what the kid wants? Like, why would I need an actual attorney if you're just kind of conversating with the children and deciding, hey, Johnny wants to go back home or whatever? Couldn't a counselor just tell that? Like, why would I need an attorney to tell the judge Johnny wants to go home?
Because children, however young, have human rights, and the attorney is there in as best way as they can for their level of understanding to explain what ramifications it has if they never go back home and they allow the parents' rights to be terminated and they get adopted. A counsellor can't give legal, and by the way, that's another person that is often involved, is a CASA volunteer, which is a child advocacy, that's terrible, I can't remember. There is another, and they're volunteers within the system that are there to kind of counsel the kid and say, do a bit of both, like what's in their best interest and what do they want. But our job is to provide them legal advice. And it might sound silly to you that I'll be speaking out for a newborn who's drug affected, but they have a right to do that, because whatever decisions are made, it's proven that they can have long-term effects on not just their circumstance, but their health.
No, I mean, and I believe that. And when we did the Roe versus Wade episode, part of the research, and I don't think I ever got to it on the show because there was so much research, but part of the thing they talked about is that the financial implications of kids going into the foster system. And a lot of them, got emancipated at 16, or they just left the foster care system and hit the street and they never were heard of again. But when they tracked these kids down, 5 years later, they had significantly diminished financial earning capacity. And it basically was like a tsunami as far as wrecking their financial path. So I mean, I understand that different things affect them. I mean, I absolutely do. And it does affect them financially as well, but I mean, I guess, you want to, obviously you want the newborn to have some kind of say, but I was just confused. I guess I was thinking that, you basically, that for the most part, the court just listened to what the kid wanted and then did what the kid wanted. So that's why I was just like, okay, but the kid's not going to want maybe the best situation for him. But I can understand if the kid doesn't want to go to fucking foster care. That's one of the things we covered on Roe versus Wade, is about that people are saying, be pro-life because we have foster care and we have adoption. And it doesn't work like that, you guys. I mean, with the numbers and the research, you would be amazed at the long-term effects of kids that come out of foster care. And this would be just an average foster care. This isn't necessarily like one that's abusive in any way, right? I mean, this is just normally, and it's frightening. It's depressing too, and I can't imagine the shit that you see, because that would fuck with me. I couldn't even imagine it,
But I have to say, I haven't been doing this job very long. It's probably 2 months now. These kids are fucking amazing. These kids are resilient.
It's just because they like her British accent. Don't buy that shit, you guys.
And actually they do. I have to say, it's yet another example of living in it. Like, little kids will go, are you British? I'm like, oh God. Mel's been talking to them. But these kids are amazing. Through no fault of their own, they've often ended up in just awful situations that you and me couldn't even imagine. And they are kind, funny, smart. They amaze me. That's the best bit about the job, is being able to, because now my clients are children. Every single one of my clients is a child.
Yeah, adults suck balls as clients.
Yes, they do.
Good God.
They absolutely do. And you should see their little faces when I say, you're my boss. You can tell me what to do. And the teenagers too, these kids are they amaze me. They really, really do. So, and the very least we can do is provide them with a voice. So if they're not able, or they don't want to, or whatever, they can have their opinion. It may not, like I said, it may not be what ultimately can happen or should happen, but they have to be able to be, have someone stick with them all the way through. And we stick with them until they have reached either. And once a child is removed from their home, there are several things that could happen ultimately. They could either be reunified with their parents, which is the number one goal. Whatever that might have happened, the number one goal is always to reunify the kids with their parent or parents, because that is what is ultimately best for them. Even if we think, oh my God, look at where they live, or look at the way they are, it's still better for that child to be with their parent than it is to be with anyone else. So that's the ultimate goal, is reunification. But if that isn't going to happen, it could be a guardianship, or it could be that the parents' rights are terminated. So a termination of parental rights, and that's it. You're done. You're out of that child's life. And another option is adoption. And there are different kinds of adoptions, open adoptions. And then the other potential outcome is what's called OPLA, which is the alternative permanent placement living arrangement, which is basically when kids age out of the system. There are resources that we are there to tell them about and help them get linked with, so that they can have the best chance going forward. It's a wonderful job. The people in the Legal Aid Center are just wonderful. The pay is shit, but it is what it is.
She's a slut for injustice, like
Yeah,
you said
yeah.
multiple times.
But it's the most rewarding, and I've only been there for 2 months. I would say it's the most rewarding and fulfilling legal job I've ever had.
So, like, if a child was getting sexually or physically abused at home, is the primary object to still reunify that kid? Like, I mean, obviously, if it's like a mother's boyfriend and she's like, fuck you, get out of my life, stop, don't do that to my kid, then, if the child goes back home with the mother, that would make sense. But what happens if it's like a family member that's doing it? Then is the goal to still reunify them with that home?
The goal is always reunification with assistance given to that offending parent. So if it's domestic violence, giving them domestic violence classes. If it's neglect, giving them parenting classes. If it's drugs, then it's giving them substance abuse counseling and assistance. And if it's sexual abuse cases are dealt with in a different department. We're split up into areas of Vegas. So I'm in the North team. So my kids are usually in North Las Vegas, and then there's the East, Central, whatever else. But the sexual abuse is a whole separate team. It's very, as you can imagine, very specialized. The whole thing is very specialized area of law.
Yeah, because I'm sure that there's people out there that maybe were pedophiles at one time that got counseling and they're no longer pedophiles, but it just seems like that's the one thing where I don't know if you would ever really be able to fix that. Can you really counsel that out? And I don't know.
And like I said, I don't work in the sexual abuse department, but I imagine not. And it would be more about getting the parent that didn't know it was happening or allowed it to happen for it to become a safe place for them. So reunification only happens when the parents,
under set circumstances.
Yeah, the parents have met a case plan and have shown multiple behaviors and what's the word I'm looking for? There are a lot of boxes need to be ticked.
Circumstances?
Yeah, a lot of circumstances need to be
So who's actually, I know you work for the nonprofit, but who's actually paying you? Is that coming from part Nevada state tax funding, or is this literally like just donations, or how does it, because it sounds like that should be a state program of some sort.
Yeah, lots of grants, donations. I believe we do get state funding too, but I'm not aware of all the intricate ins and outs of it, other than it's a non-profit and that's who we get paid by. Child welfare is a very niche area and ever evolving area. So another thing to mention is that every child is supposed to have a CAP attorney, a Child Advocacy Project attorney in this kind of case. But sometimes it will happen that there are 3 kids and 2 of them want one thing and one kid wants another. I can't represent all 3 because there's conflict. So I will take the 1 or the 2, and that other kid will go to our pro bono CAP attorneys. And that's attorneys doing all different kinds of work in all different kinds of fields, but they do it for free. And that's how I even found out about this, about CAP, was because I did that too. Many years ago, I had just a couple of free cases, and you have to go through some training, but ultimately you're kind of thrown in to do it pro bono with a mentor from the CAP, main CAP office. And so, yeah, there are lots of attorneys, and this is one of the things I was going to say is, if in any way it sounds interesting to you, it's a great thing to do. It's very rewarding, very fulfilling, and we're always looking for pro bono CAP attorneys for those cases where we've been conflicted out. And remember, there's only 30 of us anyway for the entire state, so we do always need pro bono CAP attorneys, and you can just have a few cases, and it's, like I said, it's very, very rewarding.
If you guys are listening to this, there is, I'm sure, a legal aid center wherever you are located. And if it is something that you are concerned with the needs and the welfare of children who do not have a voice for themselves and who are in really shitty situations, then I would highly recommend that you look at donating to them. I'm sure they're a 501c3, so you would be able to, well, check with your tax advisor, but 9 times out of 10, you should be able to get a write-off, so it would help on your taxes as well. And I want to thank Zoe for coming on and sharing a little bit about the attorney stuff that goes on with what she does now, and of course why British people wear wigs when they look stupid as hell. And ladies and gentlemen, we will be talking about where the royal family got their wealth. And I started doing some research. It is not pretty. It is not pretty. So we're going to have to make sure that Zoe is ripe and ready to go on that episode because it's a little dirty. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Follow us on social media at Finance is the Other F Word. Lily Lou Mittens on Instagram. Check me out on TikTok at FTOFW_podcast. Also, I have another TikTok channel, Moment of Metal, which is where I just count down metal CDs that I like. And it's a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of work. So if you're a TikTok purveyor, hop us there. And if you want to be a patron, you can head on over to patreon.com and you can support the show with as little as $3 a month. We really appreciate you guys tuning in. And with that, we are out this bitch.
Cheerio.
Thanks for listening. If you like us, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.